In fact, we are ready to bring in the Attorney General for the great state of Indiana. His name is Greg Zoeller. Greg, thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, it's good to be with you.
Where are you, by the way?
Let's see, Calumet Avenue. We're
at a train?
Not quite. No, we're out somewhere around Centennial Park.
Okay. Now, I mentioned that golf outing today, is it, or what?
I got a visit with a group after that, and then I just came from Purdue, so I gave a shout-out to the Boilermakers, and I got to be up in Chicago later. So.
Okay. Full day then, huh?
Well, yeah, no, it's been that way for the last few weeks. I didn't see where the Attorney General gets a holiday from being Attorney General, so I guess I'm in it for all 4 years.
When you're driving about, and I know you do a lot of traveling via the automobile, you don't fly all that much. Do you carry the blue light in the car in case somebody acts ignorant, and you just go ahead and get remove the middleman and go right to the Attorney General for a beating?
You know, I call it in.
You call it in?
Yeah, I'm supposed to be going out on a couple of these, they call it a ride-along.
Right.
So, you know, I represent the law enforcement in the state, usually in court, so I like to get out, and I think the last offer was to go on one of these, what they call the Mustang patrols, so they high-speed chases, and I don't know how my insurance carrier would like that, but that was the last invitation I got from the state troopers.
You better run that one by your wife first. You know what I mean?
No, she might not really think that's such a wise choice.
Yeah. No peace at home, no peace in the office, my friend.
Yeah, now you got a good point.
Now, am I mistaken, or is this a golf outing benefit, or is it something different?
Yeah, you know, I've actually sandwiched in between. I was, you know, I think we've talked about this before, but the annual Zoeller Open was this past Saturday. So Fuzzy and the Zoeller family had a big event for me down home. So I got to make sure that I'm still welcome back in the hometown.
Is that Gook Creek Golf Course? What is that down there?
No, it's Covered Bridge.
Covered
That's
Bridge.
Fuzzy's place down near the river.
Ah, down by the old river, eh?
But I didn't get a whole lot of golf in, but I do show up every once in a while, and I appreciate Fuzzy's willingness to help out his cousin. But he always says that it's the one day of the year that I'm allowed to play.
I would think that would be allowed. Once in a while, you have to have a day. Even the president takes quite a few vacations. He's on number 50, I think, for 2 years. So you deserve at least one or two.
Well, I'll tell you, Preacher, I know we were going to talk a little about the last 3 weeks, you know, after this state fair tragedy down in Indianapolis. I've had some pretty full days and nights with all of the tort claims and the legal actions that resulted from that tragedy. So it hasn't been the most fun last 3 weeks of the job, and I would have gladly passed on this, but it's part of the job, and we have been trying to focus on, you know, the victims who, you know, we've got 7 deaths and likely somewhere in the neighborhood of 40 plus seriously injured. So it's been a really sobering kind of part of the job to focus on the needs of the victims.
I'd have to say, Greg, and the toll, the death toll, and the injuries on top of it, it could have been a lot worse, considering.
Well, it could have been, and I tell people that, you know, it's an opportunity for the state to show that we're not like any other corporation, and the Tort Claim Fund is not a insurance policy, and I'm not a defense attorney. We have higher obligations to the people that come to our state fair, and we're hoping to, you know, show the ability to act swiftly. It's not about a legal question of liability. You know, people say, well, why don't you wait and see what a court says? But the reason we have a Tort Claims Act is that the state can step up when it feels like it's appropriate and compensate victims who are in need right now. We don't have to wait for any litigation. We don't have to pay a lot of lawyers. We need to do what we can as soon as we can.
Is this going to be a class action, or is this based on each individual case?
Well, at least in terms of what the state is going to do, I've already said that the Tort Claim Act allows me to use as much as $5 million per incident, they call it, and then $700,000 is the maximum award. So I've talked to the governor. The way the statute reads is I have the authority to compensate people with the governor's consent. So I make a recommendation and he consents. This is the first time in all 10 years that I've worked in the Office of the Attorney General that we've ever had something where all $5 million was needed. I've had a number where we maxed out on an individual, but never the total for an incident. So this is the first time, but I think both I and the governor agree that this is the type of thing that the Tort Claims Fund is meant to try to compensate people quickly that are victims of this tragedy.
Greg, yesterday, 10-year anniversary of the bombing of the World Trade Centers in New York City. Were you out and about at any particular or specific functions yesterday?
You know, I was. I'll tell you, the guy that I brought in to help me with this tragedy of our own with the state fair, a guy named Ken Feinberg, and he was the administrator of the 9/11 fund. So for the last few weeks, I've had an awful lot of focus on the 9/11 and my own memories of the day. But there was a dedication of a 9/11 memorial in Indianapolis, 2 beams from the center that are now part of a memorial. So that's something new in Indianapolis. I know there's memorials all around the country now, but it was, you know, the last 3 weeks having the state fair disaster and then my own memories from 10 years ago have all kind of come back. It's been a pretty somber experience.
What capacity were you at the time, 2001?
Well, I was actually the director of Indianapolis's World Trade Center. So this was something that I'd done when I left the White House, and it's mostly import, export, warehouse, and distribution systems, so I was an attorney doing international trade. The center in Indianapolis was not a physical center, but we were doing a lot of work primarily with health care and radio and some electronics. So we were doing trading, and all of the work, everything that was part of my the logistics, the finance, everything was in those 2 buildings. So I'd spent a lot of time at the World Trade Center in New York, the top where they used to have the windows of the world, at a special area called the World Trade Club. So as the director of Indiana's World Trade Center, I often traveled there, and everybody I knew that were these very social and engaging, very friendly people that welcomed people to the World Trade Club. They were all on the top floor, so they all lost their lives. But it was the whole memory of it is, I'd say, pretty painful and not something that I want to think about every day. But between the state fair and that, I'll say it's been a pretty somber week.
Well, amazingly, we have avoided any further tragedies, any major anyway. I have to wonder, and it's awesome, and it's hard to comprehend how Homeland Security and either the FBI, Secret Service, CIA, whoever is doing the investigations on these terrorists, that they've been able to prevent something similar.
Well, they've not only been able to prevent it, but as much as people might complain about the additional security at airports and the focus on security against terrorism, I think, I remember right after the 9/11 attacks, there was a concern that our whole culture in the United States that really promotes freedom and liberty and access to government and all the things that we enjoy about our country, there was a real concern that the terrorists would win and we would all live in fear. So I think in my own, let's say, the 10-year retrospective, I think we're doing well not to have let the terrorists win. We're not living in fear. We have to be practical and we have to be vigilant to guard our liberties, but we need to exercise our freedom and liberty as a celebration of why we are not going to hide from terrorists and be in fear.
Before Greg, we talk a little bit about Indiana Unclaimed, what I call the Indiana Lost and Found, which I think is one of the coolest things government could do for you. And I don't know if you've gathered this by now, but I'm a pretty big proponent of the smaller the government, the better. But that's just me. But I have to ask you about something that has been trending in America for a while, and there's just recently, I believe, in a suburb of Boston, they're looking at banning the Pledge of Allegiance. Where is Indiana on saying the Pledge of Allegiance in schools? Do you know?
Well, I would be shocked. We would have heard about it if they had banned anything like that. Is it just the under God that they have an issue with?
It's the under God and giving, I think, with some people who live in the politically correct world, which I think is one of the reasons that sometimes I believe we're in the shape that we're in. Political correctness gone crazy on us. Removing the under God part and/or allowing children to opt out of the Pledge of Allegiance and just go stand in a corner or not say anything at all.
Well, we're all citizens, and I think the appreciation for what this country means around the world and the freedom and liberty that we all enjoy, I think part of our weakness is that we don't really appreciate it. If you don't go around the world, you won't see how much we have to be thankful for. So I'll tell you, Preacher, if anybody up in the region says that they're going to ban the Pledge of Allegiance, you call me up and I'll go and say the Pledge of Allegiance with you outside of the schoolhouse.
Okay, that sounds like a deal, because I actually had I had my druthers this afternoon, and we got a late call from your office. I was going to begin the show with the Pledge of Allegiance, so maybe I'll start that tomorrow. I'm just, this is just crazy. This is crazy to me. Indiana Unclaimed. I know there's a lot of money piling up. Do you know how much?
$350 million.
Jeez, I'll take half of it in cash.
Hey, there's a finder's fee. You can go on the radio and start calling out people's names and see if it's their unclaimed property.
Yeah, you know what? Maybe once a month I could go through there and look for some Northwest. Could I do that? Could I look for people who appear to live in Northwest Indiana and go, hey, why don't you go to Indiana Unclaimed? There's some cash laying around. Can I do that?
You can not only do that, but if you're willing to help promote it, I'll get some of the people in my unclaimed office and maybe a few investigators, and we'll put together a list and help you find people, and you promote it as much as you want.
Okay, well, I don't know about, do we have to have the investigators? They make me nervous. Greg, it's always great to speak with you. Time runs short. We're right in front of the news. Any closing thoughts at all?
Well, back on this whole subject of our state fair and 9/11, the job of Attorney General is one that I really have enjoyed, and I think the honor of representing the people of the state every day is one that I feel a great sense of honor. But there are days, Preacher, that I'll tell you it's a tough job, and I wish I could pass on a few of these things. So you think of your old buddy while we're trying to work our way through this disaster.
I certainly will, and I have talked to the governor of the great state of Indiana, Mitch Daniels, during my tenure here, as well as Steve Carter before you, Senator Lugar, Treasurer Murdoch. I've talked to a lot of politicians in the last 8 years, And I can sincerely say that I trust in you that you will do the right thing. I've always had a really great feeling about you as a person, and not only as the Attorney General, but also as a person, that you truly believe in doing the right thing. And I've always trusted you'll do it.
Well, I'm glad you feel that way, but it's part of my what I promote is people shouldn't trust their government. They should always be a little suspect. So you take a good hard look at how I do this and let me know if I did anything wrong.
Well, this might even make you feel even better. I had the opportunity to speak with someone who you have investigated. I will not leave the name out. And we talked, and this individual said, you know what? The guy's doing his job, and I don't have any ill feelings whatsoever towards Greg Zoeller.